Good morning and happy New Year to all your listeners. I want to welcome you to the show. I'm Bob Pace, and I'm your host. And I have a secret, and it's how to fight CPS and win. And our show is uh, um, produced by Vincent W. Davis. He's a family law attorney with lots of years' experience. He's a trial lawyer, and you can call in to 888 and you can either call in if you want to be on the show, or if you want to have a free consultation for 30 minutes up to an hour with him about the strategies of how to fight CPS. So, with further ado, we have a guest speaker. Her name is June, and I'm going to turn it over to you, June, and you're go ahead and tell us your story.
Well, I guess I'm 40 now, so the details of it are, a little hazy, and I probably blocked a lot of it out. But I guess my time with CPS started when I was probably around 13. My mom had some mental disorders, and she was dealing with her own trauma, and she just really wasn't ready to be a mom, I don't think. But it turned into in my life, and they removed me from my home. Now, my first placement with my first family, they were great. They were loving, they were stable, they were everything that a kid would really want in parents and a family. But CPS thought I was getting too close to that family, like I was forming too much of an emotional or personal bond with that family, which is so bizarre because you would think that CPS would want the betterment of a child's life, but they ultimately did remove me from that home. I think by the time I was in CPS, I was board of the state from probably when I was 13 to about when I was 16. My grandparents had agreed to just finally take custody of me because my situation was just pretty awful. Um, but after they removed me from that home, they placed me with several families. I think it was 6 or 7 families I was placed with in those couple of years. Unfortunately, I was only in CPS care for about 2 or 3 years. I can't imagine what children that are little and spend their whole lives in the system go through because 7 families in 3 years, that's a lot to deal with. Um, so they removed me from that family and they put me with another family. And I told your producer my story too. So the next family that I got placed into, I don't remember a whole lot about them. I remember that they were Mormon, and they restricted like what I could do, how I could dress, what I could eat. Um, and I was a teenager. Um, I really wasn't following the directions of that religion very well because it was extremely restrictive. So they removed me from that home, and I think I was placed with a couple of others. And then I got placed with a family, and this is a little graphic, but it needs to be told because kids that are in their foster care system are not treated kindly. The family that I was with had a mom and dad, and there was a little 3-year-old girl there, and there was this golden retriever, and the golden retriever kept hopping on me, trying to mount me. And I know it's very graphic, but the dad just thought it was just the most hilarious thing in the world, and he would just laugh hysterically at this. And it was really awful for me because I'm like, I don't want this dog doing this to me. This is disgusting. Well, as I spent more time with this family, I noticed that his little girl, she was probably 3 or 4, and she was still in diapers. And I kind of found that a little bit weird. Like hadn't been around a lot of toddlers, but I kind of felt like she should have been out of diapers by that time. But the weird thing was that the dad like insisted on changing her all the time. I never saw the mom changing a diaper. And again, a little bit graphic, but it needs to be told. This dad would call his daughter little puss, and I just thought that was so bizarre. Um, but we went on a walk one day, and we were with the little girl, and it was in the woods, and she kind of ran off into like a little opening there, and he actually assaulted me. Um, I was probably maybe 14 at the time. Um, I was really scared. This was a person that was supposed to be looking after me. He was supposed to be trusted, somebody who was, entrusted with my care. And he did those things to me. So I went back home and I told the mom as soon as she came home. I was like, look, this is what happened to me. And this is what's probably happening to your daughter. And I told her, like, he's always changing her. This is his nickname for her. Like, this is really scary. And the mother was irate with me. Like, she was calling me all kinds of names. She called the social worker, and she had me promptly removed from the house. Um, the social worker hated me. Well, I don't know if she hated me, but it sure seemed like it. It just seemed like she was doing everything she could to make me miserable. So she put in my file, and I found this out later, that she put in my file because of the incident that happened with the foster dad. She labeled me as sexually suggestive, which meant that every foster child is picked by foster families, or this is what I was told. I don't know how true this is. Maybe she was just saying this to make me feel bad, but she told me that foster families get to view the child's file to find out, like, what potential issues that they might have with the child, how best to care for them, yada, yada, yada. She told me that, no families are going to want to pick me because I have this in my file. And it made me feel really bad. Like what had happened to me was my fault. Like, did I do something to cause this man to treat me in that way, or I just didn't know. Um, so it was a really surreal experience, and like I said, I blocked a lot of it out. But after that, because she labeled me as sexually suggestive, she actually put me in a program called Baby Think It Over. I don't know if a lot of people know what that is, but essentially they give you a doll. And the doll, you put a key in the back of it when it starts crying, and it has sensors all over it, so it knows if you throw the baby, all kinds of stuff. So she sent me to school with this doll, and it was disruptive to the students. I think I was high school, maybe middle school. I think I was in high school. I can't remember very well, but the doll was really disruptive, and I had it on the bus with me. I had to carry it everywhere I went, and I fell asleep on the bus. And the students took the doll and they wrote graffiti and curse words all over it. Um, so the social worker actually charged me with destruction of state property. And I spent a couple of months in juvie for that. They put me in juvie, and they had all the girls in this annex kind of building where there were no windows, and what windows were there were boarded up. And I was in there for a couple of months, and it was really traumatizing to me because, like, when you don't know if it's night or day, or you don't know what time it is, there were no clocks on the walls. Um, you start to, like, it messes with your mind. Like, what time is it? Is it 8 o'clock in the morning? Is it 7 o'clock at night? You didn't know what time it was unless they were taking you outside for your hour. It was jail. So yeah, I got charged with destruction of state property. And then that went in my file. So I was just labeled a troubled kid, and nobody wanted to keep me. None of the families wanted to take me in. I did eventually get placed with a woman, and she was just as awful as the social worker was. And they were, in fact, very close with each other. So anytime there was a problem, the social worker would get called. And I don't think I was a bad kid. I think I was really traumatized by the things that were happening to me. And I had some issues, but I wasn't a bad kid. This woman, um, she was paid by the state to take care of me because foster parents are given an allotment of money for each child that they take, that the birth parents have to pay towards. So I found out later that this woman was given, I think it was around $500 to $800 a month to take care of me. And that money never went towards me. It always went to somebody else. It always went to her kids. It always went to, like, buying really cool snacks for her kids, like stuff for her kids. And I was never allowed to partake in any of that. She would go on vacation and drop me off with different families. that were within the foster care system. So I was never a family with this woman. She was always telling me how I was no good, but she had no choice that I was there. She was a single mom. I guess my social worker thought that it was better to be in a house with no male figure in the house. So she was a single mom. And she had one other child that was a foster child, and then she had her biological son. And um, she had another foster daughter, and she was always comparing me to this girl, saying, she's so much better than you. That's my daughter. um, I have no choice but to have you here, but you're here. And my bedroom was actually in the basement. It was just a dingy basement with all her junk stored in there. And I had a bedroom. There was no door, but it was at least carpeted. I guess I can thank her for that. But she would physically fight me. She would never buy anything for me. I remember her and I got into a fight because I needed chapstick. My lips were really chapped, and she refused to buy it for me, so I ended up stealing it. And then she got pretty angry with me about that. We got into a fight in her front yard that I did not initiate. She just got really angry with me, tackled me, and started hitting me. I told my social worker about this, and she just blatantly ignored me. She just treated me like I was the problem. Um, and I told her how I was being treated. I told her how my needs were being neglected. I told her all these things, and once again, she just completely ignored me. And eventually, this woman moved away. Um, well, backtrack a little bit. The biggest thing about me being placed with this woman was a school teacher, and she was actually working in the same school as my birth mom. So I had to get dropped off at her work from the bus. But aside from all the trauma that was happening to me while I was in the childcare system, I also had to get off the school bus and dodge my mom every day and go to this classroom. And the social worker knew that my mom worked at this school. Like, she knew that it wasn't a secret. So eventually the woman moved away, but she did not take me with her, thank God. But an even worse situation happened. They labeled me with all of these diagnoses, and they ended up dumping me in a residential facility. And I was probably there for a good 8 months. It just that whole 3 years of my life was just really defining to me as a person. It shaped the way that I interacted with authority figures. It shaped the way that you know, my trust issues that I have with authority figures. It shaped a lot of my personality.
Well, you're
And
definitely saw your abuse and neglect there. Question: what state is all this taking place in?
this happened in Virginia.
Okay, in Virginia. Okay, and then the initial when you were taken from your mom, was there a dad? Was your dad with your mom or your
Yeah,
biological?
my parents were together the whole time that I was a child.
So
My mom,
why were they taking you away? Why would they take you away initially at 13?
so so my this all started. Now remember, my mom, she had a lot of problems with
Okay,
herself.
okay.
She was bipolar. She had her own traumas growing up. Um, a lot of it was kept a secret. Um, the guidance counselors would try to get me help, and people were, my parents particularly, were covering things up, until it just came to a head. Um, I took a
I see.
kiwi out of their.
So
So
things were kind of very rough by the time 13 rolled around, right? So how was your you remember your early childhood? Was your childhood all right?
no, no, my mom, she had a real big insecurity. I was the only girl in the family. My mom seemed like she was really jealous of me because my dad and I were really close.
Hmm.
Um, and it was a constant power struggle. Even though I was just a little girl, she felt the need to to be more important than me. Um, and it
Was
just turned in.
was your mom alienating you from your dad? Was he
Well, in a
seeing
way,
your
yeah.
parents as bad parents?
So my dad was always in the house. She didn't really talk about my dad to me. Like she wasn't like, "Oh, your dad's such a bad man," when I was home alone with her. But when he would get home, it would be like, "Oh, Christina did this today, and Christina did that today," or this and that. And when the physical abuse was happening, I would tell my dad, "This is what mom did to me," and he would get really upset about it. But my dad was the kind of person that would just sweep everything under the rug because he wanted the white picket fence and happy family, and he wanted to keep up appearances.
Hmm. Hmm. Now,
So nothing was.
so when you left your parents, you said that you're immediately put into um, foster care. What were the CPS? Why did they take you away? Because of you as a child wasn't very good, or because your parents didn't know how to take care of you?
So the catalyst to all this was, I'll just tell you from where this began. Um, I took a I took a kiwi out of the refrigerator. This sounds really ridiculous, but this is how it happened. I told you my mom wasn't really right. I took a kiwi from the refrigerator, and to teach me a lesson, she called the police, and she was trying to charge me with theft. Well, they thought she was ridiculous, but then she started to exaggerate everything, and I got a CHINS order placed on me.
At
Um,
13?
yes, so a CHINS order is just a child in need of services. That's what a CHINS order is in Virginia. I don't know where
Okay.
you're from,
Yeah, I'm
but
I'm from California, so and first of
so
all, let me tell you about CPS. There's a lot of negativity about the whole system, foster care included. So I'm well familiar because I had cases of my own, and so the main theme it seems to be with CPS is money. And I'd
it,
like to, you know,
yeah.
you were saying money was first of all, we don't. The parents don't pay for foster care. That comes from the state or from the federal government, and it's a billion-dollar business because the more you keep you in foster care, the more you move you around, the more money they make. And you're right, the money does not go to the child; it goes to
To the
supposedly,
foster parent. Yep.
yeah, to the caretakers who don't use the money for what it's supposed to be for. So I feel you
But
on that
my
part.
So in the, I don't know how it is in California, but in the state of Virginia, I actually ran across the paperwork as an adult, so I understood what I was reading. I ran across paperwork when I was helping my mom move out of her house. By the way, my mom and I have an okay relationship now. I'm mature enough to forgive her for things that I didn't think were entirely her fault. So my mom is still in the picture. Um,
Okay.
so I was helping her move. Her and my dad did eventually get divorced. I helped her move, and I ran across some documents that were relating to my foster care placement, and
Hmm.
they were required to pay into this.
Wow.
Um, they were charged with a state child support, so they had to pay into this.
Okay.
They gave the money directly to child support enforcement, which then in turn gave it to
The foster care. Go ahead.
the foster care. So yes, the parents in Virginia, I don't know about any other state, but yes, they do pay into this um, for the child because the state charges these parents for the state to take care of their child.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, this all started pretty much when my mom got mad at me for taking a piece of kiwi out of the refrigerator. Um,
Wow.
and they placed a CHINS order on me. Now, my mom and I would get into physical altercations, and as a little girl, I didn't fight back because I was a little girl. Like, what am I supposed to do? My mom is attacking me. Like,
Did you talk to any professionals like a school teacher, a counselor, or
so the school teachers, yes, they actually, I'll tell you one story that happened when I was probably in seventh grade. I needed a skirt for my chorus recital. I was in the school choir, and I didn't have a black skirt, so my mom gave me one of hers that she had worn when she was much younger. Well, I guess she really didn't like how it fit on me. Like, I began to, I hit puberty and I began to, develop a body, and she just didn't like the way this skirt looked on me. So she told me to take it off, and I said, "No, Mom, I can't. Like, this is the only black skirt. I have to do this." So she strangled me, and she left marks all over my neck. And I went to school like that, and they called CPS.
They're
Um,
required to. Yeah, they're definitely required to show that.
and when I was in third grade, she used to hit me with a belt. She would make me strip my clothes, and she would hit me with a belt. And I had a weeping wound on my thigh. Um,
Oh,
and my dad told me that if I told anybody what happened, then my mom would get fired from her job. And so I didn't show anybody my leg because I didn't want to tear apart my family. I was an elementary school child. I I guess I just
well,
felt
you love
bad.
you love your parents, and it's hard as a young child because what you know now is a lot different than when you know it when you're at 13,
Exactly.
12, or whatever like that, and so you're fighting. Plus, you look at your parents for authority and for love and for all the things there. Now,
Yeah.
was your dad during all this time close to you or help you out in any way, or is he just was distant from you?
So my dad, it's hard to explain my dad. My dad grew up in a family that was really proper, nobody in their business, things like that. That's how he was raised. What goes on at home stays at home. That's just how he was raised. And he wanted to keep up appearances of having this lovely little beautiful family, that was above reproach. So I was asked to hide a lot of things. When I went to school with the scratches on my neck, my dad told me to tell them that I did it to myself, um,
Wow.
because he didn't want anybody in trouble. So all of those events kind of wrapped up into a ball that labeled me as a troubled child. So when the Kiwi incident happened, and I was running away, because I was just tired of being afraid. So that was part of the reason why they put a CHINS order on me. I had an ankle monitor on. Um, I was under house arrest so that I couldn't run away. Um,
That made,
so
made you a troubled child. That's wrong. That's wrong.
yeah.
Did see
So
the sad part about it is child protection is supposed to protect people like yourself. They're supposed to protect children from neglect, from abuse, some sexual exploitation. Um, they're supposed to make sure they got food and housing and taken care of. No excessive corporate punishment like welts the legs. That's wrong. And uh, and they're
yeah,
supposed to do that.
they didn't do anything.
Yeah, and I guess when you called the police or told the police about it, they didn't believe you, and so they turned you over to the. See, I don't understand why the CPS allow all that to happen. I just, especially that thing
So
about foster care. That
here's what happened.
uh,
Here's what happened to eventually remove me from my parents' care. The majority of the experience that I've had with CPS has been awful, but there are people, very few and far between, in that organization that do care about children, and that was how I got removed. I had a probation officer because there was one incident where I fought my mother back, and I ended up scratching her wrist. It was a scratch. She called law enforcement on me, and I was charged with assault and battery.
oh boy,
Um, and so I ended up being placed on probation. So there was a couple of probation officers. One was assigned, one moved, and then I got one, and he saw right through all of the facade. He saw right through my mom. He saw right through all of the bull crap, and he told her. He said, "You're full of you are so," and he ended up being the one that removed me from the home. He got the social workers involved. I started being questioned, interviewed, um, and then I was removed from the home, at that point,
okay,
because up until that moment, everybody was just, "Oh, she's just a troubled child. She's this, she's that." But this one person, um, kind of laid out all the evidence in front of him, and he saw right through it. And he was a very smart man, so he'd probably been doing this for a long time. And that's how I eventually got removed. I can't tell you if it would have been better off for me to stay at home or it would have been better off for me to be in foster care, because both of the situations were pretty traumatic.
Well, they've been best to put everybody in therapy and counseling and have professional help and classes for your mom and dad to take. It's
They,
sad the way CPS has been.
yeah, so they did make my parents go to parenting classes that they had to pay for.
Oh,
My dad was actively trying to get me back into custody because it doesn't look good for your kid to be in foster care. And I do feel like that my dad missed me, but he just didn't believe in divorce. He didn't want to leave my mom. He just wanted a happy little family, but it ended up being my demise. Um, but yeah, it's definitely a money system. Like you have to pay for all your classes. You have to, go through all this stuff, and it's all ran and facilitated by, the government employees, and they have to pay those employees. It's definitely a money grab. And then the the foster parents, the foster parents are paid for each kid. Like this
oh
woman
yeah.
had this foster parent was probably making about $1,500 with the two kids that she had.
Until they're 18, she'll get money. You see, it's what's happened is that foster parents, and I hate to say it, some of them have been good out there, but most of the ones I've heard have been terrible, where they abuse the children and use the money for their own means, for their own mechanism, and
Yeah,
they're paid till they're 18. You see, the federal government out here in California and the other states gives money per child, and state does the same. And with those funds, they found an easy way to make a lot of money. Now, the social workers that we had here in California are very young, very inexperienced, and they're more concerned about the bonuses that they get for keeping the children in custody. They're more concerned about their Gucci purses or their BMW cars, where they're very rich in California. The socials, there's
yeah.
a $1 billion business, and it's a sad state of affairs. And in Virginia, um, Virginia, I've lived in Virginia, so I know. But I lived in the Washington D.C. area of Virginia, and I know what Virginia's like, and I know a lot of rural areas, a lot of undeveloped areas, and so forth. And um, I'm just really appalled to hear how they put you in a foster care and you weren't protected. When you had a father that wants to abuse you sexually, a foster care father, that's wrong. That's a no-no, and they're supposed to protect children. And
And
they
not only that, like I was punished for even saying anything. They,
yeah.
they made me go. She acted like it was my fault.
Mm-hmm.
She acted like I did something to bring that on. And it took me years of therapy to even say it wasn't my fault.
So where are you at now with this story? I mean, I see your early years as a teenager and how you abused and so forth. What happened after you turn 18? What happened then?
Well, so my grandparents eventually agreed to take custody of me. Um, I think midway after I turned 16.
Okay.
Um, so I did end up going to my grandparents. The so the After I got dumped in the residential facility, um, basically, if a kid is labeled too troubled, they put this kid in a facility. They pretty much lock them away, right? And they medicate them. They come up with all these diagnoses, like um, they, what did they say? They labeled me with all kinds of stuff. I think I was on about 7 different medications 3 times a day. Um, and
Wow.
if you refuse to take your medication, and as a ward of the state, you have nobody to go to. Like as a teenager, when you become aware of things that are right and wrong, you have nobody to go to. Like it's not like you can go to your parents and hope that they protect you. And in my case, I couldn't go to my social worker because she just wanted me to suffer for some reason. I don't know why. um,
Mm.
but if you refuse to take your medication in these facilities, you get chained down to a bed and you are injected with them.
Wow.
And you're placed into what's called a quiet room until you comply with what they want you to do. So when I was 18, um, I stopped all my medication because I didn't need them. I remember just feeling so lucid all the time. And that's probably why I don't remember a lot of things, because I was heavily medicated. Um,
Wow.
but after I turned 18, I did eventually, I went back home to my parents because my grandmother, she had stopped receiving money for me. I don't want to speak bad about her because they did end up taking me from a
Well,
bad
that's okay.
situation.
But did she physically not get the money, or she no longer was have money that she used on you, or because you're not
So
18 then?
she ended up she ended up being allotted money for me
Okay.
by the state.
All right.
She wasn't really a foster parent, but she was receiving money for my care. Um, so and I don't know what they did to get me. I don't know if they got vetted through the foster care system. I don't know any of this. I don't have any idea. But she was being given an allotment for me, and once I was 18, um, she ended up sending me back to my parents. And the whole being placed with my maternal grandparents was just kind of crazy to me because I wasn't super close with my mom's mom. I found out that the apple didn't fall far from the tree. But it was just kind of a way for my mom to still keep track of me, I guess, because in the time that I was in the foster care system, my parents were not allowed to have contact with me. They weren't allowed to contact the foster parents. They weren't allowed to contact me, which is why I found it so bizarre that the social worker deliberately placed me with this woman who worked in the same school as my mom. Like, that was just incredibly bizarre to me. She
Mm-hmm.
didn't
Mm-hmm.
care about me. She cared nothing about me. She didn't care about my betterment. She didn't care about my well being. She didn't care about my emotional state of mind. This social worker was purely there just to ruin my life, or at least that was the view that I had as a teenager.
Was any counselors at your school open to you talking to them, or is it against children to talk to counselors? Or
So the counselors in the school were able to talk to me. I remember having a heavy counselor presence in my life from elementary school all the way up to high school.
but they
But
didn't help
then,
you. They didn't help you.
no, no, because at the time when in elementary school, they would, make reports about me, and they would, nothing would come of it. But then when I was in the foster care system, I'm a ward of the state, right? So who are they going to call? They're going to call CPS, and my worker is going to get notified of whatever is going on. So everything in
Did you ask for a supervisor, somebody else above your social
no,
worker?
I
Your
was not
private-
that.
And how about an attorney? Did you have access to an attorney?
So I had a guardian at Lightem, but all these people are in cahoots with one another. They work in the same building.
Unless
They
you
work in
get
a
a private, you got a private attorney who can
yes,
represent you. Be good, but what child at that age has that kind of money to hire a private attorney?
correct. And
You,
like I said, they're all in the same building. They have personal relationships with one another. So the guardian ad litem and in the state of Virginia, any child that's in the foster care system has a guardian ad litem and a social worker. But when the two of them are in the same building and have personal relationships with one another, what good does it do to talk to either one of them?
you're right. You're right. You're right. That's something that needs to be changed. I'm at this moment going to tell our phone number for our listeners out there. Our phone number is 888 6582. I'm Bob Pace, the host, and we're here talking about CPS and how, in this particular case, Jane is talking about how she's been abused as a young child through her teenage years and all the things she's go through. She's trusting her parents, she trusted the social worker. All were kind of negative about the whole thing. Um, the attorney that produced this show, Vincent W. Davis, he's a licensed family law attorney. He has lots of experience. He's a trial attorney, and he'll give you 30 minutes to an hour about strategies to get there. So I think you told me at the earlier part of the show you're 40 years old right now.
Yeah.
So what happened from 18 to 40 now? What's going on there? Do you have a family of your own? Do you have a husband? Do you?
I do. I do. I went through lots of therapy um, because I didn't want this whole trauma to affect me. It has affected me.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, I can imagine.
but there are certain things that you just can't get rid of. But I started my own independent self when I turned 18. I couldn't wait to turn 18 because I couldn't wait to be out of the system and making
Hmm.
my own decisions, making my own medical decisions, making my own physical decisions
Living as an adult, and
as an adult. So when I was 18, I took all my medication and I flushed it down the toilet. And they said, "You can't do that." I said, "Yes, I can. I'm an adult. You no longer govern me. Like, I'm not part of the CPS system anymore. I'm not on probation. I'm not ward of the state. You can't make decisions for me anymore."
do you have any
So,
relationships with people your own age? Do you have any kind of relationships at all?
yeah, yeah, I do. So I'm married. I have 6 children. Um,
Okay.
and um, after I turned 18, I got married. Um, I hadn't really dealt with childhood trauma at that stage in my life, so I did make a really bad decision regarding a partner at the time, because when you are living in a toxic environment as a child or even as a teenager, you kind of tend to gravitate towards those things. And for any parents that have children in the foster care system in those toxic environments, they need to know that that shapes a person, and they end up gravitating towards those toxic relationships as adults. So
Goodness.
I did make a bad decision about a partner. I had 2 children with him. I eventually left him. I joined
Uh,
the military. Um, I did join the military. I went through years of therapy to try to deal with, all of the past occurrences so that I can make better decisions for my own children. Um,
uh,
and I feel like I have a really good life now, but it didn't start out very good. I had to fight really, really hard
now,
to be the person I am today.
Did you have any problem with CPS with your first two children that were born to you? Did they go okay or?
Funny that you would ask that. So my son, he did have a speech delay, and I ended up reluctantly getting a community service involved in his care. And it got to a point where I just said, I think he's good. I don't need this service anymore. Um, and the worker that used to come to the house to do therapy with him got really offended that I was declining services, and they ended up calling CPS on me because my son, who was a toddler at the time, had some bruises on his legs.
Oh
He's a
boy.
little boy. He's a little boy, so he's gonna have little bruises from running into tables, falling down, normal things that little toddlers get into. So they ended up, sending a social worker over, and they were really invasive. Um, they examined my son head to toe, asked me all these questions, and it was eventually found unfounded that I was doing nothing wrong. Um, but it was really, really traumatizing for me in that moment because I just remembered
Oh,
being a
yours.
kid.
Yes, exactly.
I remembered being a kid thinking, oh my God, they're going to take my son away and he's going to be in that situation. Um, and something that always really bugged me is I begged my social worker practically on my knees to send me with my aunt, my dad's sister. I was extremely close with her. I loved her. I adored her. And she's a beautiful woman inside and out. She's just so kind and so sweet. And I begged her to send me with her. And she flat out refused. She would have rathered me be in the presence of strangers
That with a
being
family member. Yes.
than with a family member. So I just found that incredibly bizarre.
So after you divorced your first husband and had two children, you say you have six children. Did you marry again?
I did. Yes, I'm still married to him.
Okay, so this is your second husband, and you had what, four other children with him?
Yes.
And then, has there been any problems with those four children?
No, there hasn't. I have. There was a particular county that I lived in with my first two children, and that county was really um, overzealous about CPS. So I was a single mom, two kids. Um, there was, a couple of financial hardships that were going on. Our power got cut out one time, but I ended up paying it and it came back on. It wasn't that big of a deal. My hot water heater broke and I couldn't really afford to fix it for a good month or two. So, in order to give my children baths, I was, boiling water on the stove and I would pour it in a bathtub that was tepid. I was making bath water. I took a cold shower to get myself clean. Well, my daughter went to school. She was in elementary school, and she had gone to a teacher or something, and she was like, "My mommy is such a good mommy. She makes sure that I have a hot bath, but she has to take a cold shower." Well, they called CPS.
Yep, they are.
They
Well,
came into
the teachers are professionals, all professionals. If there's any suspect of anything, they will call CPS. The sad part about it is that I've yet to meet any good CPS workers or good CPS system. It's all been negative. I mean, I've had
they are
horror stories.
extremely they are
Yeah.
extremely invasive. So they came to my house. They took pictures of every single room. They looked through my cupboards to make sure I had food. They questioned my children separately. And after about the second time, my son was roughhousing around with some friends, and he ended up fracturing his arm. We
Mm-hmm.
took him. We took him to the hospital. We explained what happened. The doctor wrote a note to the school and to the PE teacher. Findings are consistent with the circumstance, meaning I was telling the truth. Um, no foul play is suspected. Yada yada yada. Right? We take that to the school. We say, hey, he can't participate in PE. He can't
Mm-hmm.
run around. He can't use his arm, anything like that. CPS came knocking on my door. And at this point, I was like, you're not coming into my house. You can go get a court order. You can do whatever you need to do, but you're not coming in my house.
They don't. They can't by law. Let me tell you something. CPS. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to let them in your house. You don't have to let policemen in your house. They have to have a court order signed by a judge from a court with specific instructions of what they can do and they cannot do. Your home is your castle, and you can lock the door, refuse to answer anybody in there.
Yeah.
Um, the problem is,
So through that, I went through a lot of harassment with CPS because they wanted me to comply, and
they
I was
will.
not going to comply.
They're going to get the
Um,
police involved. They'll get the police
yeah.
involved.
So they tried to get the police involved. Um, and when that didn't work, he would come by the house every couple of weeks. And then it turned into weekly, demanding I allow him entry into my house. They ended up taking my children out of school and questioning them without my consent or my knowledge.
They can do that. They can not take them out of school. They can talk to them at school in front of teachers present, but they cannot take them unless they have a court order. Again, they have to have a court order to do things.
So they did take my children to a police station and they questioned my children without my knowledge or my presence. I found this out. We had to actually go pick them up at the police station. And of course, as a single mom, I have no resource to file a lawsuit. I have no resource to
Hire
um,
an attorney. You need to hire.
hire an attorney or anything like that. Like, I don't have any resource to do that. So I just put up with it. But I did stand my ground and I said, no, you are not allowed in my home. This is my home. This is our safety. This is not what we're doing. Because
Right.
I knew that this particular social worker was toxic, like the one that I had.
Yes.
And this person was going to try to take my kids. And I wasn't giving him a leg to stand on.
Right. Right. So now they took away. Did they take away your first two, or just the four? I mean, I guess all the children
No,
are very close in age. Or are they grown up now? Or
um, none of my children were taken. None of them.
Oh,
Um,
they were only
so
taken out of school to be interviewed, but they weren't taken from your. Okay,
they were not removed from my care. No.
okay.
They sure did try. I think if you stand strong and you stand firm with CPS and you tell them that you are the one that has the authority, then you can come out successful. But a lot of people are scared to do that.
Oh yeah, and they aren't. Well, my case is I trusted them. I told them my whole life nothing to hide, and they were trying to charge me and my wife neglect with our children because my parents were dying, and I had taken all their belongings and put them in my house, but I stacked them neatly. But because they're 3 boxes high, they said that could harm your children, even though our children were taller than the boxes, and they were good there. I had found out in my case it was my family members on my wife's side that was interfering with our life, and they're the ones that caused all the problem. And it took us 3 years, and I lost one child, and I lost my home and everything else to get an attorney. But I got my two other children back. So um, I I really I don't want to sound I'm anti CPS, but they're not doing what they're supposed to do. There's two
They're
things.
not. I
They're
will tell you
supposed
that I'm
to
anti
protect,
CPS.
right. They're
I
supposed to protect you and
They
protect
are.
children, and they're not. So, as your case, the other thing is they're supposed to do what's called family reunification. The number one goal is restore the family to a family that can be together and through process stuff. But they don't believe in all that. They just want to keep them in because the longer they keep them, the more money they can make.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
like it's a money making thing. So, what made you um, come to us? I mean, is there something that I can help you with, or?
Well, no, I just saw a post and it said, "Tell us your story," and I just
Oh, I'm
messaged
so
your
glad. So,
producer.
you've enlightened us listeners to a different perspective. I've been so fortunate or blessed the last couple of weeks with people with different backgrounds. I've had a grandmother that wanted her two grandchildren back. Her daughter had been fallen into where she was in love with people that are incarcerated, and she didn't care about her children.
Hey, hang on a second.
I've had, yeah, go ahead.
Are you there?
Yeah, I am. I'm holding on. You said hold on a second. I'm still here.
Yeah. So, I mean, I saw a post and it said, "Tell us your story," and I am just a huge advocate for. I just really want to be able to speak on this because I haven't spoken on it. Um, Children in the foster care system are just pawns, and they don't care. They don't care at all. Like
Well,
it doesn't
you
matter.
said you were abused. What other you were sexual abused? Were there like necessary corporate punishment? Were you starved, or I mean, what else abuse went on in foster care with you?
So she would give me food, but it would be only like the bare minimum stuff, just to basically keep me alive. But she would buy.
Wow.
There was food that I wasn't allowed to have. It got to the point where I was actually hoarding food in my room, and then I would get in trouble for that, and it just turned into a whole ball of wax. And there was a lot of emotional abuse, telling me that I was a bad kid, and um, that's why I got placed with her. And then there was like, "I'm no good. Um, I don't have a choice. I have to have you here." Whereas really, she did have a choice. What are you doing here? Like some kind of weirdo. Because so, um, but so once my children grow up, because they deserve all of my attention, I had made a decision to be a foster parent myself because these children need somebody that has goodness in them and doesn't just treat them as a check.
Yes, yes. Well, that's one thing that foster care is supposed to do. My kids were first living with my wife's sister and her husband, but they couldn't take care of them because it was involved in work. It involves fixing meals, involves them taking them to school, involves them helping with their homework, involves clothing, feeding them, and activities, and they just couldn't do it. And
Yeah,
so um, the group home was not any better. The group home was terrible to be in because they were taught to have their hands out the side, not say hello to the parents when the parents came to visit. not to love the parents, no love, no appreciation, and it was sad. It was sad to see. We had a family that was well to do. The only problem I had in my life is that I lost a job, and it's hard for me getting a job, and I didn't have the finances to put my parents' stuff in storage, which I should have done. And I let my beautiful home go disaster because I couldn't do the landscaping, the gardener. I couldn't afford them anymore. And as I say, we had a huge home. It was everybody had their own bedroom, their own little castle, and their own room was their own decision. But this room was kept spotless and everything else. And they tried to find things wrong. They tried to go to school and find things wrong, but they couldn't.
Yeah.
But
Well,
because
it's funny that you say that group homes are bad places because they really are. Not only is a child placed into a home without real a parental unit that gives a crap about them, but the children that are already traumatized, it's no secret that traumatized children just have problems.
oh,
They have all sorts of problems. And when you put a bunch of kids that already have trauma together, they start to feed off of one another and they start to make bad
exactly,
habits.
yeah,
Like if there's one child that's 17 and this child has used alcohol, I didn't do this, but there are children that do. This child may start abusing alcohol, they may start abusing drugs, and then
yeah,
there's a
yeah,
there's a kid that comes to this group home in the presence of this child because they just jam all these kids in a room. You share rooms with multiple kids. So these kids that are already traumatized are picking up bad habits from their traumatized friends. This makes a very, very toxic environment.
yes, yes. Well, my son was going to private school in high school, and he had to do his homework. And at 9 o'clock, they said lights out. They didn't care about his homework, and he had to use a
No,
flashlight under the blanket to do his homework. I mean, my kids were very well done at school. They were very much involved in scouting, involved in sports like soccer, and so and we had outdoors things as a family and everything. We had Disneyland passes, and when I lost my job, I had to could no longer afford them. But they had everything they can understand. The life is there. But what CPS did for me in my case is ruined my family. My wife and I are still having problems. It's 9 years later, and we're still feeling the effects of CPS because they didn't really help. They didn't have weekly meetings so the family could get together, the children and the social worker stuff to talk about things. Everybody was separate, and the court system. I don't know if you were ever in court, but the judge was in cahoots. The judge is not a uh,
they
a
all are.
family thing. He only has his experience of how to fix cars. He was a collision attorney,
Yeah.
meaning that he knew about property and everything, but he didn't know about kids. And so I tell people this is election year, and we need to go out and vote and exercise our rights because the judges are elected people. We need to make sure judges that are in family court are experienced family lawyers that are, will really help the kids and not sit there and make wheels and deals.
See, the
Everybody in court,
problem
go ahead.
problem with the court system, the problem with the court system and social services CPS is that these people same judge because judge is the only juvenile court judge in the county where people reside. And these people go in front of them day in and day out, and they start to form personal relationships with them. So when a child stands up in court and says, I'm being mistreated by this foster family, or I'm being mistreated by this social worker, I don't believe that these people have my best interest at heart. The social worker just kind of says, she's just a troubled kid. She's making it all up. And the judge believes the social worker because they start to form personal relationships with one another,
Oh,
and then they
they
start
go
to
off,
see
they
these
go and
kids
have meals
change.
together. You're right. You're right.
Yes. So there has to be some kind of a buffer between this court system, CPS, the guardians ad litem. There has to be some sort of buffer between these people because you're right, they're all in cahoots with each other.
Yeah, well, they're allowed in the courtroom. Did you know that in California, you're not allowed in the courtroom to hear your case being discussed or talked about? Your attorney, and if you don't have money for a real attorney and have a public defender, they have 20 plus cases and they don't have time to put any time to it. They're going to make the easiest deal in there. I guarantee if you allow people into the courtroom and they listen, and they would be a lot better taking care of your family, but they don't allow them in the courtroom. You have to stand, and it's standing. It's not. There's no seats for people. You have to stand for hours, 2 to 3 hours in the hallways, waiting
I remember.
for the cases there. And then the children, they suppose they're trying to protect the children. They have them on TV. They don't even have them in the courtroom, and you don't really have a total picture. And you can't confront your children. You can't see your children. When my daughter was taken at age 12. Last time I saw her, she was 12 years old, and I never once had a monitor visit or anything in there. And they had no reason to it. They were just abusing the system. They were abusing to get more money and more money. It's just a money,
Yep.
money thing. And they don't care about the effects of children. Right now, I have two boys. And one of my boys who was doing well there went through school, and he's in his senior year in college, halfway through the year. And he said, Dad, I got to quit. Something's really bugging me. And we found out that his time in CPS's care, social services, has ruined him, and he is no longer. And he's right now trying to recuperate, come back there. But he was a straight A student, and it has affected him so bad um, that I said, "Well, you're lucky you come back to your dad. He'll still have you there." He's 24 now, and so my 18-year-old is doing the same thing private school, but luckily he's going through, and today I took him to school, and he's in his senior year, and I'm very blessed to have that. But it's hard for me in my case because I started having children late in life. I have two groups of families. I have some older kids and some younger kids. And when I lost my job, I was 60 at the time. When social service got involved, I was 65. I'm 74 now. And it does good for me to talk about what happened to me and share my stories and hear you. But it frustrates me because it's a slow process to change things. We need to change the way that CPS protects our children and the way that they handle families and foster care, as we looked at too, because there's no reason you should be with a man that wants to take advantage of a young girl. That is totally terrible. I mean, I've heard of stories like that, but that is totally wrong because uh, that's sexual exploitation, and that's with gratification that man and they use religion. Some of the religion parts. I mean, it's important to have religion. I'm not here to tell religion bad or good, but anytime it endangers children, anytime the children feel neglected, like in your case, you're 40, you're still traumatized by it. It does help to vent. It does help to talk about it. Um, is there any suggestions that you may have that could help our listeners?
Only that if you feel like that you have not done anything wrong, that you just need to stand firm because they can't find something. So they can twist things all out of proportion if they want to. They can make up things if they want to. But at the end of the day, if you are able to stand firm and say, this is, I am not a bad parent. I am not a bad mother. I'm not a bad father. Like, you are not taking my children. Um, that's the only thing I have to say about it, because if you let this bear take you over, if you let CPS take over your life, it's going to be the end of it. I mean, honestly, and like you said, they don't have the authority to enter your home without a court order. And there's only so much that they can make up, because when they start going for court orders and police enforcement and all of those things, they actually have to prove that case. They have to say, this is what's happening, but how are they going to prove what's happening if you don't allow them in the home?
Well, exactly, and give them ideas and things like that because they're
Yeah.
looking for trouble. They're looking for trouble. Well, we have about less than a minute left of our show time, June. I want you to feel that it's really good that you have shared your experience. I'm glad that you have a family and you have a partner or a husband that you're able to work together and raise your children. And it sounds like you would like to be a foster care. Maybe you're the good kind of foster care that gives something that the kids are missing, and you have that experience you share like there. I want you to feel free to call back anytime you want to talk further about this. We like to more up to date. I'm just thankful that you are a very intelligent, warm woman that is still, can still do something in society. I mean, you have a car, you have a job, and so forth, and you've shown to the rest of us that at 13, if things look bad and they go bad and so forth, that you can turn your life around, and
Yeah.
you have to fight for it. And I tell all the listeners out there are lots of places you can call and talk to as young teenagers. There's suicide hotlines. There's all kinds of things. Don't give up, and so forth. But I want to tell everybody, if you want to be on the show as a guest speaker or need some help from our attorney, Vincent W. Davis, who's a licensed family law attorney with trial experience, please call 888-888-6582. And I'm going to go ahead and sign off to all y'all. This is Bob Pace, your host, and I want to wish everybody a happy new year, much success, and much happiness in the year ahead. So thank you very much.
Happy New Year, Bob. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.